All right, so we'll start with a lot of the significant trades that happened with the trade deadline. It was an eventful trade deadline. There wasn't really a whole lot of stars that got moved, but the significant trades, and I have a big list of them. So, first one that I have on here is the Heat and Hornets trade that happened. Terry Rozier for Kyle Lowry and a 2027 first rounder, and Kyle Lowry ended up getting bought out, and I'm pretty sure he's going to sign with the 76ers. That's the last thing I've heard about that. I mean, if there are any trades on here that you want to talk about, just let me know. I mean, dude, have any thoughts about that one?
Yeah, I think it's a good trade for the Heat. I think with Lowry, they were just trying to buy out his contract. I think, they weren't playing him as much as they had wished to when they first acquired him a couple of years ago. So I think just getting that contract off and then picking up Rozier, he's a good ball player. He's an athletic guard. He can get to the rim. He can score at the midi. He can score at the 3-point line as well. I think he's going to fit in well for the Heat. So I like that trade, and giving up a 2027 first rounder. I think the Heat are always going to be a contender. So I don't think they're really worried about giving up like a top 5 pick with that. So I like the trade overall. I think they did a good job there.
Yeah, I think that the Heat, I mean, won the trade just because of like Lowry's getting older in age, and I mean he's a good point guard, but like the Heat need some scoring too with that, and Rozier's a good scorer, and he's younger. He can lead the way for the Heat. I mean, and just be a good. I mean, him and Tyler Hero in the front court could be good. But next one, this is the most significant trade. Whenever I say stars, I did forget about this one. But the Pacers and Raptors had to trade Pascal Siakam and a future second rounder for Bruce Brown, Jordan Nwora, Kyra Kira, however you say it, Lewis Jr., two 24 first rounders, and a 26 first round. So I know that Bruce Brown, he's the most significant player that the Raptors got, and he is not very happy. He wants to get bought out, and I mean, there's no way that he stays with the Raptors. The Raptors are really trying to rebuild around Scotty Barnes, which Scotty Barnes is an all-star, which we can talk about the all-stars later. But I think that the Pacers, made a smart move. I know it may be a rental, but I mean, the Pacers needed someone. I mean, they needed another star in there with Halliburton, so that they can do the pick and pop, pick and roll. Just it's like a better Miles Turner in there, because Miles Turner does that, but he's kind of inconsistent. So I think that Siakam just opens up the floor for the Pacers in general, and I mean, Halliburton's been a great point guard, as we can tell. So I mean, Siakam's going to get his 25, 27 points per game there. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, so obviously, the first thing I look at whenever you have a 3-team trade is the 2 teams that, they got a lot of stuff for the trade for one big player. And for the Raptors and for the Pelicans, I think they were just, for the Pelicans, I think just trying to clear up some cap space with Kyra Lewis's contract. And then for the Raptors, they're obviously, I think you would agree they're in a rebuild right now. So just getting rid of Siakam for whatever they could get, and they got a good load off of it. But then when I look at the Pacers in a trade like this, when you're giving up so much for one player, I always look into, is this one player going to give you the best shot at winning a finals? Because, you're giving up a lot. You're giving up two 2024 first-round picks and a 2026 first-rounder. You're giving up Jordan Nwora as well, and Bruce Brown. So you're giving up a lot for one guy. And so it's just, will Siakam in the next – did they give him a 5-year contract off of this too? Are they giving him that max?
I haven't seen anything about a contract yet. I mean, no contract extension. So I mean, that's the big question mark. I think is just like, will this be a trade that seems just like a rental, or will it benefit in the end?
Yeah, because I think he's due for a super max here in the next year or so. So I know he's probably going to want that. So for right now, I'd like the trade for the Pacers. I think he's fit in well for the few games that he has played with them. Obviously, Halliburton, when the trade happened, he's been kind of in and out of the lineup with injuries. So we'll see how they do after the All-Star break once they all get healthy. But I like the trade, but I just want to see in the future what their plan is with it. And if they extend his contract to keep this team around, or like you said, if it's a short-term rental.
Yeah. Next one on here is the Knicks Raptors trade, and this is a big one. OG Anunoby, Precious Achua, and Malachi Flynn for R.J. Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, and a 2024 second rounder. I think that both teams benefited in some way from this. I think that OG Anunoby is a perfect Tom Thibodeau player because he can score, but he can defend like crazy. I think that they benefited from that. Precious Achua is a solid backup big for Mitchell Robinson, and so I think that's another good thing. I mean, the Knicks just got pieces that like are a little older and more like experienced, like with success, because I'm pretty sure OG was I know that he was a rookie, I'm pretty sure, whenever they won it in 2019. So, I mean, that's championship experience right there. And just like Pascal Siakam with the last trade. And it shows that the Raptors are trying to get into a more of a rebuild too, because R.J. Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley are younger guys that have a lot of upside. I mean, as long as they keep on working. But I think this is one of the first win-win trades. I mean, and one of the only win-win trades that I see like on here, just because like both teams had different needs coming in to this trade deadline, and I feel like they fulfilled their needs. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. I agree that, OG is the type of player that Tom Thibodeau just loves to have on his team. Last year he was an all defensive second team, and a lot of people probably could have had him as a first team as well because he led the league in steals per game. So I think he does add that. The one thing that I don't like for New York is giving up the offensive shot creation they had with Emmanuel Quickley.
Mm-hmm.
I thought with him being as young as he is, and just his development every year that he's been in the league, I do hate to see that go off of the Knicks. I think he could have done something really good for him, being sixth man of the year possibly with him. But I think in return with OG, they do get that defensive help. And when the trade came out, I read a report that said that the Knicks were trying to get rid of all their quote-unquote soft players off the team. So I don't know, obviously the behind the scenes, but the Knicks like it. So I think if they like it, then it's a good trade. And he's done good for them. He's obviously hurt now, so I want to see how long he's out for after the All-Star break. But I like the trade for both teams. I agree with you. It's a win-win. I think the Raptors improve with Quickley and Barrett and getting those young guys on the team. But I also think the Knicks improve tremendously on the defensive end with Anunoby.
Mm-hmm. This next trade is kind of a weird one just because both players have not played a game this year. But the Rockets and Grizzlies made a trade with Victor Oladipo for Steven Adams. And the main thing that I want to talk about with this one is it sounds like they want Steven Adams to be a backup / mentor for Şengün, which I like a lot just because Steven Adams has been a solid big for a while now. Victor Oladipo, I mean, he had a good year with Miami last year before he got hurt. So, I mean, he's been riddled with injuries for a while now. I don't know I think his best days are definitely behind him. But he could provide a solid role for the Grizzlies just because, I mean, he could be a mentor to Desmond Bane. But it seems like this is like a mentor for mentor trade, if that makes sense. But what do you think about that one?
Yeah, this is one of those trades that you see on the trade deadline day, and you're just like, oh well, it's just two teams just trading two people. I didn't really take too much away from it. I think it is definitely just a mentor for mentor thing. I think Steven Adams is kind of going to have that role that Udonis Haslem had for the Heat. I think he'll have that role with whatever team he's on every year that he continues to be in the league. For Oladipo, I think, like you said, his greater days are past him now, and he's just trying to find that role with the team to where he can just get some minutes on the court and still prove that he can be a solid role player off the bench. But this trade, it didn't really do too much for me. I kind of just looked at it, looked at it for a few minutes and just went past it after that.
Right. This next trade is kind of like that one, but I kind of labeled this one as a buyout trade, even though that both teams had pretty decently significant players. The Raptors and Nets made a trade of Dennis Schroeder and Thaddeus Young for Spencer Dinwiddie. Dinwiddie got bought out, and I don't know about the other two. I didn't see anything, but I mean, I knew about Dinwiddie's because he signed with the Lakers. The Lakers are looking good with him. Um, I definitely think they were just trying to get rid of some contract stuff. So I mean, do you have any thoughts about that one?
I don't have too much about it. I like Dinwiddie. He's a good player.
Same.
I've watched him for a few years now, and I think he's kind of that underrated player that not a lot of people talk about in the NBA. I think the Lakers did a good job of creating space so they could pick him up. They probably talked to both of these teams during the trade deadline to try and see who was going to get Dinwiddie if it was a possibility of a buyout, and they probably worked things out. As far as cap space goes there. So I like the pickup for the Lakers. For the other two teams, I think they were just trying to free up some cap space in the middle of the season.
Yeah. This next one's more of a significant one. It's the Hornets and Mavericks. You had P.J. Washington traded for Grant Williams, Seth Curry, and a lightly protected 2027 first-rounder. With me being a Mavericks fan, I really like this trade because P.J. Washington is more active, and he averages more points per game than Grant Williams and Seth Curry combined. Now, Seth Curry and Grant Williams did have a good couple games before the All-Star break with the Hornets, and I think that's because they got the ball more in their hands compared to the Mavericks because of Luka and Kyrie. But I think that P.J. Washington is a good pick and pop, pick and roll guy for the Mavericks, which the Mavericks need more of those guys. I mean, you've got Derek Lively, you've got now P.J. Washington, and even the next one I'm going to talk about is the one with Daniel Gafford, who they got. And I mean, that's a lot of the guys because the Mavericks have their wing guys already with even besides Luka and Kyrie, you've got Tim Hardaway Jr., you've got Josh Green, you've got Jaden Hardy even. And Seth Curry was averaging about 4 points per game, and Grant Williams was averaging 8. So the Mavericks thought that those two guys would give them a high upside, and they didn't, so they had to move on from them. And I think that they made the best of it with P.J. Washington. So, what do you think?
Oh yeah, I agree. I think most NBA fans around the league know of P.J. Washington, but with him playing on the Hornets, and it's not a big market television-wise, I don't think a lot of people actually know how good of a ball player he is. I think he's one of the better, unknown stretch fours in the league. He's able to do the pick and pops, and I think him being with Luka is going to be a great pairing. I think he's going to be able to space the floor out more for Luka, rather than what Grant Williams did while he was there with Luka. So I definitely see this as a win for the Mavericks. I definitely think they're going to be better for it. And for Grant Williams, I just think, like you said, he didn't provide what they had expected of him early on in the season. And so I think they were just trying to move on from that, not only because of his underwhelming performance on the court, but also just because he's a talker, and there are a lot of reports coming out that a lot of the teammates didn't like what he was saying in the locker room, that he was a yapper. So I think it's a win for the Mavericks to get that out for their hands for a good player in P.J. Washington, and for the Hornets, they're kind of a dismal franchise right now. So just Grant Williams isn't a bad player, so it's a good pickup for them, but it's not going to hurt them in the long run either. So.
And Grant Williams and Seth Curry got paid for the past couple seasons that they were looking pretty decent. Grant Williams has looked good in the past 2 years. Seth Curry, I bet his best days were at the Mavericks in the past, so that's why they had some high hopes. But they needed to unload those contracts too. But next one, and this is kind of a Mavericks bias with me, but I put that Daniel Gafford for Rashawn Holmes and draft compensation trade between the Wizards and Mavericks. I think that this is significant, just me personally, because it's it's mainly a pick and roll guy for Luka and Kyrie. You see how good Derek Lively's looking, and Daniel Gafford has some youth to him too. And he looked good in his debut with, debut and past couple games with the Mavericks before the break. Looking a lot better than Dwight Powell. So I think that this is a solid. Rashawn Holmes he's all right, but I think that the Mavericks benefited from getting Daniel Gafford, who can be an X factor. I mean, in a deep playoff run.
Yeah, I think you can tell the Mavericks are trying to move on from Dwight Powell. They got Derek Lively now, and now they've got Daniel Gafford, who's only 25 years old. So they're definitely young at the position. They're going to develop. Gafford's finally getting his chance to be on a good team. He was with the Bulls his first couple years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was with the Bulls, and then he was at the Wizards. These last few years too. So I think he's finally going to get his chance. He's going to play with one of the best players in the league. I think that's going to help him in his development also. I think he and Derek Lively are also going to just, benefit from each other, just being so young and being able to, tell each other some different things that they might have picked up on in their playing days in college and in their first few years in the NBA. So I like that as well. I think defensively, Gafford adds a lot that, Dwight Powell just didn't have. And I like the trade. I think it's a good trade again for the Mavericks. I think they did a good job of, getting a quality player, and I think they're adding some really good depth to get ready for this last stretch of the regular season and going into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I was a big fan of it there is, and they're trying to blame Kyrie for last year and not making the playoffs, but I feel like that was, and of course I'm re-emphasizing what I've talked about in our preseason talk, is that you you have a star come in like halfway through the year who needs the ball a decent amount. It's going to screw up your flow. But, if you have a training camp under your belt and then just get like some solid role players, I think you're going to be fine. And that's what happened, and that's why the Mavericks look good right now. In that no one's throwing Kyrie under the bus anymore, is because he had a training camp to play with these guys to really understand, how this team's going to flow. But, yeah. So, next one I have is the Knicks and Pistons, which I feel like this is a really underrated trade. Quentin Grimes, Malachi Flynn, Evan Fournier, and Ryan Arcidiacono, and 2 future second-round picks were traded for Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. I really like this trade for the Knicks because Bogdanovic has proven that he can score, and that he's a good basketball player. Alec Burks has proven that he can score he's a pretty good shooter, but Bogdanovic is going to give you 18 to 20 a night, and Alec Burks is going to give you about 10 to 12. And those guys, those were the only 2 guys besides, of course, like Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren and maybe Jaden Ivey on some nights, that consistently perform for the horrible Pistons. And so I think that a new change of scenery for them is good. I don't know what the Pistons were doing because they already have a load of guards, and you just got 4 new guards. So look for maybe 1 or 2 of them to get cut, or they're on expiring contracts. I think they're just trying to get rid of some guys, but I think this is a big W for the Knicks.
Yeah, I'll touch on the Pistons just very shortly. Yeah, with the 4 guards, and they're all very young guards. It's not like any of them are young. Besides Fournier, with Arcidiacono, Malachi Flynn, and Quentin Grimes, those are some young guys, and so they might be able to come in there and develop under Cade Cunningham. Maybe get a 2-way contract for maybe 1, maybe 2 of them. But I think they're definitely gonna get bought out probably and just go to free agency and get picked up by either a team that gets close to the playoffs that needs some depth, or just maybe from a bad team that wants to pick up a young player to develop them. But with Bojan Bogdanovic, I definitely see that as a good trade for them with him and Alec Burks. Like you said, Bojan is he's a vet in the league. He's an experienced player that has shown year in and year out that he can go get you a basket if you need one. He's shooting above 60% right now this year, averaging 20.2 points per game. He did strain his calf earlier in the year, so he's probably having some lingering effects from that, so might want to watch out for that after the All-Star break to see how he does recovering from that, as he did that when he was with Detroit during their 28-game losing streak. With Alec Burks, I think he's going to add some good defense to the team, which, they already – it's not like they need any more defense, but, the more the merrier for Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah.
But I think, for the Knicks, I do like this trade a lot. I think they were probably one of the big winners of the trade deadline. I think they made some aggressive moves, and I like it a lot for them. I mean, you're seeing the success for them right now with Brunson and just how that team has gelled so far. I think when they get Julius Randle back, all this will come together. I think they will end up being probably the winner of the trade deadline.
Yeah, and I mean, I have two more trades, but I think the three main winners of the trade deadline, I mean, in not any particular order, were the Pacers, the Knicks, and the Mavericks. Because, of course, we've talked about the main ones. I mean, the Knicks got OG Anunoby, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Alec Burks. Those were their main guys. And, of course, the Mavericks got P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford. And the Pacers got Siakam as their main thing. And, like I'm about to talk about, I mean, Buddy Hield's been okay for them this year, but he has a huge contract. And so, them getting rid of that contract and then, like, buying out, like, Korkmaz is, I think, big for them. I mean, in their future in general. But,
yeah.
I mean, who do you think are some of the winners?
I like what you said. I like the Knicks. I like the Mavericks. And I like the Pacers. I think they did a good job of not only getting some depth, but with the Pacers, getting that quality all-star on the team. He's also an energy guy, so he's going to bring some energy to that team, which they already have. So that's going to bring a lot of youth to the team, even to the older guys. Anytime there's energy around the team, it just makes anyone feel younger. But with the Knicks and with the Mavericks, they added some quality depth pieces, some pieces that the coaches really like and that fit their scheme. So I think that's going to make their gelling even smoother. So I like those three, like you said, for the winners.
So the trade that I was just about to mention is the 76ers and Pacers trade. So you've got Marcus Morris Sr., Furkan Korkmaz, and 3 second-round picks for Buddy Hield, which Korkmaz already got bought out by the Pacers. And, I mean, I think that it was just like, let's try to see the most that we can get for Buddy Hield. Because, I mean, it's not like he's a bad basketball player, but he's underperformed this year. Not shooting the ball as good as he normally does. And, I mean, maybe that changes with the Sixers. I mean, Embiid, if and when Embiid comes back, Embiid will space the floor out. And, I mean, even like Tyrese Maxey's spacing the floor out right now for them. But, I mean, you've got Embiid who averages close to 35 points a game. I mean, and then Buddy Hield can hopefully knock down some open shots for them. So, I mean, what do you think about this trade?
Yeah, I think this trade is two things. Like I mentioned earlier with Siakam, he is due for a max contract coming up. So I think with Buddy Hield, like you mentioned, he's not performing the best right now like they had hoped. So I think, one, just clearing that cap space to free up some money for Siakam to ensure that they can provide that max contract. I think that is one of the reasons why they traded this. And then, two, I think getting those 3 second-round picks was big because, in the trade with the Raptors, they gave up 3 first-round picks and some future second-rounders as well. And so I think just getting those back and just having that in the back pocket for, maybe another trade down the line, whether it be this summer or the trade deadline to follow next season. So I think those are the two reasons why they did this. As far as the 76ers, I think just picking up another quality scorer. Obviously, Buddy Hield's been in the league for a little bit now, and he's shown the capability to, score from the three-point line as well as, sometimes create his own shot inside. So I think just getting that depth was probably key for them, especially with some, injury problems for them the last few years in the playoffs.
So the last trade I have on here is the Thunder and Hornets trade. You got Trey Mann, I'm going to butcher it, but Vasilije Micic, however you say that, and Davis Bertans for Gordon Hayward. I think that the Hornets just wanted to unload on Hayward's salary just because it's pretty big. It's like close to $20 million, I'm pretty sure. And I mean, Trey Mann's a solid piece for him. I mean, I know that. I mean, one of the first games that Trey Mann played for the Hornets, he had like 20. But I think the main thing was just getting rid of Hayward's contract. And the Hornets' process was that, I mean, Bertans has a huge contract. I mean, not as big as Hayward's, but with Hayward, you've got a good mentor. You've got a guy that can come off the bench for, I mean, maybe like 15, 20 minutes. I mean, and he's got experience, and he can be like a mentor for like Dort, for example, or I mean, or some older guys on there. But I mean, what do you think about this trade?
Yeah, this one, I mean, it didn't do too much for me when I saw it. I think Gordon Hayward wasted a few years of his career in Charlotte.
Yeah.
He got off to a good start, but then just I don't know what happened. Maybe between him and the coach, or maybe he just was injured and we didn't know, or they were hiding something. I don't. But I think he wasted a few years in Charlotte, and just things never really got to where they wanted it to be. So I'm glad for him to get off that team and finally go, back to a contender. We'll see what he can add to the Thunder. They're a young team, so they could probably use some, older people on that team to give them some, some wisdom, some help, and development as well. But he's still a good basketball player. I think he still has a couple of years left in him where he can go get you some points, some quality points off the bench, especially come playoff time in those environments. But I like the trade for the Thunder. The other part of the trade, I mean, it is what it is. Trey Mann's a good ball player. He's going to be a solid piece for them if he develops like I think he will. But other than that, I don't really think too much about the other people in the trade.
Yeah. All right. So we talked about all the. I mean, the only thing that I want to talk about besides that is, I mean, of course, what we talked about before. I think that the 76ers, which, I mean, as long as they go through with signing Lowry, and the Lakers benefited from the buyout market, which the Lakers seem to do that with buyout players. I mean, past couple of years, you've had guys like, I mean, even last year, Schroeder got bought out, and they signed him. The 2021 year, they picked up Drummond. I remember that. But I mean, the Lakers pick up Spencer Dinwiddie and benefit right away by scoring 138 points versus the Jazz. Now, I know the Jazz aren't like too great, but I feel like the Lakers will benefit from a good like point guard, which they kind of needed a backup point guard because I mean D'Lo is D'Lo, but like I mean Gabe Vincent is underperforming like crazy. I know that he's been hurt most of the year, but it almost, I mean, I hope it's not a fluke from last year. I mean, but he just hasn't been doing anything for the Lakers. And so I think that getting Dinwiddie and stepping in, I mean, he doesn't need to score a bunch. He just needs to facilitate. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, the Gabe Vincent thing is a big reason as to why the Lakers haven't achieved what they had hoped to this year. I think Anthony Davis is actually playing some really, really good basketball right now.
Yes.
And LeBron, for how old he is, he's still putting out numbers. And, if they could have just got that production from Gabe Vincent this season like they had hoped, I think that would have helped tremendously. But I think, without that, they're just, running the pack, mediocre team in the West. So with Dinwiddie, I think it's going to add what they lost with Gabe Vincent. So I will be interested to see how they bounce back from that, and if they can, wiggle their way up into the top six and avoid the play-in tournament, or if they're going to have to win a game or two to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, they were on a roll before the All-Star weekend. So I mean, and
yeah,
also,
they were big time.
Yeah, and also, I mean, one more thing about that is like, I remember people at the beginning of the year and even the summer were like debating like who they should start with, D'Lo or Gabe Vincent. And now it's just like people completely forgot about those conversations.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that they kept D'Lo after the trade deadline. I thought, everything that you read online, he was going to get traded.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess with Vincent, being injury prone this year and not playing as much and just not being as productive, that they needed to keep someone. And, you're probably not going to get better than D'Lo in the free agency right now, with it being the middle of the season. So that's probably why they kept him. I think it's a smart choice. I think D'Lo's a good ball player.
Yeah.
I think he'll come around. I think he's just been in a slump so far this year.
D'Lo was hooping though before. I mean, he was hooping around like the trade deadline time, which kind of saved his role. So I mean, we'll see. Like, I mean, that's probably a good confidence booster for him too that they're going to keep him. I mean,
Oh yeah.
so all right, we'll move on to the All-Star events. I mean, of course, the ones that aren't the All-Star game have already happened, but I mean, we'll go through them and I mean, break it down and say, I mean, if you thought that like each person or team would win certain things. So the first one was I mean, and I'm not going off the Rising Stars just because they didn't include it, but I mean on the website on here. But first one was the skills challenge. You had Team Pacers, Team Top Picks, and Team All Stars. And Team Pacers consisted of Halliburton, Benedict Mathurin, and Miles Turner. Team Top Picks had Paulo, Anthony Edwards, and Wemby. And Team All Stars had Scotty Barnes, Maxey, and Trey Young. I could have told you that the Pacers were going to win this, but I mean, and just because like Halliburton, of course, with his fundamentals. I mean, Mathurin isn't gonna like try to screw up something like that with him being a second year, and I think that Miles Turner is pretty fundamental too. Not that the other guys aren't. I mean, but like for example, Team All Stars. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago in like a skills challenge or something like that, like Scotty Barnes just like messing up with Maxey, and I mean it looks funny, but of course I mean that goes into effect about who's gonna win. And then the top picks. I mean, I just see a lot of flashiness. I don't see a lot of fundamentals a whole lot. I mean, that's just me though. I mean, for something like a skills challenge, I mean those dudes are great players. I mean, and if there were a 3-on-3 competition, I'd probably take the team top picks. But I mean, for the skills challenge, I mean that's why I thought that the Pacers were gonna win, and they did win. So what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think the Pacers team was going to leave without winning that competition.
Yeah, especially with them being at home.
In Indy too. I
Yeah.
mean, they were going to do everything they could to get that win. You know, with the first round team, or the first pick team, you know, I think it was just an experience for them, and so I think they were just trying to soak it in and have a good time. I don't think
Right.
they were really trying to take it too serious.
All right.
And with Maxey's team, the All-Star team, like you said, I mean, him and Scotty Barnes were just goofballs the entire time. And
Yeah.
I don't know that they were taking it too serious. So I think from the jump, you could definitely just tell that the Pacers were in there to win it, and that the other two teams were just there to have fun and take it all in. So I think that was probably the least surprising one of all.
Yeah. So going on to the 3-point contest, you had Malik Beasley, Jalen Brunson, Halliburton, Dame, Markkanen, Donovan Mitchell, Towns, and Trey Young. My prediction was either going to be Dame or Towns, but I mean that kind of sounds obvious because I'm pretty sure those two were the past two that have won the event. But I mean, Dame winning back-to-back was pretty solid. He was on fire the whole time. So I mean, who was your prediction?
I had the same two as you as well. You know, I just thought with the other guys, they're obviously all great shooters. But I think I think he's the most fit for this competition because, you know, it's all about pressure. You know, you got a little bit over a minute to make as many shots, as many balls per rack. So I think he's built for that competition. And then Cat obviously being, you know, probably one of the better big man shooters out there. You know, he's just been very consistent throughout the year, shooting-wise. We saw in that 60-point game he had.
Mm-hmm.
So I like those two. And like you said, with them being the two champions the last 2 years, I think there was a very high possibility of one of them winning. And obviously they both made the final three. So it was a good shot of one of them winning. And those were my two picks.
One thing that I like to put into effect too, and like I mean, this was I call it the Trey Young effect. Whenever I look at like 3-point contestants, I look at like whenever I picture like them shooting, do they shoot a lot of catch and shoot, or do they shoot more off the dribble? And
Yeah.
Trae Young, his whole career basically, has done stuff off the dribble. I mean, there's barely any times whenever he catches and shoots compared to the others. And so, like, the first time that he was in it, like, a lot of people thought he was going to win it. And I thought he was going to stink, and he did stink. And it was because, because he creates more than he, like, catches and shoots. I mean, and that's not, like, a knock on him. That's just, like, for an event like this, you've got to, it's basically like catching and shooting. But
Oh no, yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I never even really took that into thought when thinking about the 3-point competition, but that's a good point.
But next one was the Steph versus Sabrina 3-point challenge. I of course, with me being more of an NBA fan than a WNBA fan, I thought Steph was going to win it regardless, and he did. But I know that Sabrina is, she's a really good shooter, but you didn't know how she was going to perform. She's performed in big stages before, but this is a completely different environment compared to even the WNBA All-Star stuff and even the WNBA Finals and stuff like that. There are most likely more people at All-Star Weekend than there were at the WNBA Finals, and that's not a knock. That's just like with the audience and stuff like that. So she performed well. It's just that it seemed routine for Steph. Steph is going off this year in general. And so because his team is mediocre, so he's having to average 27 regardless. But there's not a huge surprise that Steph won.
Yeah, I agree. It wasn't much of a surprise. She did a great job. I think it was a fun idea. I think it was a great idea to put in there. I think a lot of people were actually kind of interested to see how she would perform. And,
yeah.
She did good enough to where she would have made the finals for the men's 3-point competition. So I think she did a great job. I think it was a fun event. My money was on Steph to win. He had a little bit of pressure there in the final 2 racks, but, he did his thing. He made the shots when he needed to, and he pulled it out.
The 3-point contest and even the Steph versus Sabrina is starting to get more attraction than the dunk contest, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, and that what I am saying is not a knock on WNBA whatsoever. It's just that because of the audience, you didn't know if she was going to fold under pressure, but she did not. She shot well. She only lost by 3 in the final round, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
So, that shows that, she lived up to the hype. But, last event, of course, is the dunk contest. You had Jaylen Brown, you had Jaime Jaquez, Mac McClung, and Jacob Toppin. My prediction was most likely Mac McClung again, which he did. But my second, and of course with him being a Kentucky boy, I thought that Toppin, which, besides being a Kentucky boy, he can jump out of the gym. I didn't know if Toppin would give him a run for his money. But there wasn't a whole lot of eventful stuff with this dunk contest. And my prediction of Mac McClung was right. There's not really much more to say about that. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I had McClung winning too, and obviously me being a Kentucky fan as well, I had Toppin finishing second. I think Jacob got robbed. I don't know why Jaylen Brown went on. I don't know what he did that was so spectacular. I think just with him being the first big name player to do it in quite a while, they probably just wanted to please him and put him through.
Right.
But the dunk contest ever since Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine has gone downhill. It has been atrocious. I didn't even really want to tune in to watch it. I went to go watch a movie after the 3-point contest, and I think I agree with what Stephen A. and all these reporters are saying. It's just why don't we go out there and find the best dunkers on the street and allow them to come out here and do something,
Right.
So I think I like what you said, that just Mac McClung won. I think that was the most obvious thing that could have happened, and other than that, there's just not really much to say about it.
Yeah. So, going to the All-Star game, we got, did you think that there were any All-Star snubs?
I think the one for me would have been De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah.
I think it's just hard to look at the impact he's had for the Kings, not only this year but the years before. His development, the stats he's putting up. I just don't see how you can leave him out. Um, but you know, things happen, voters happen, and me being a Kentucky fan again, like I said, I mean, I might have a little bit of bias, but I think he was probably the top snub of the All-Star game.
Yeah. My two were the Kings boys with Fox and Sabonis. I mean, but whenever you look at it, it's so hard that you don't know who they would replace. So I mean, because you're looking at, because I was talking to someone the other day about, it's crazy that Steph Curry's not a starter, but you look at the stats. Shea's averaging 31, 31 and 8 or something like that, and Luka's averaging 33, 8 and 8. You can't start Steph over those two guys who are top 5 in MVP. And then off the bench, of course, for the starters, off the bench for the All-Stars, like I just said, Steph Curry. You've also got Anthony Edwards, and I'm blanking on any others, but those are the guards, and of course for the bigs it's the same thing. It's difficult, and I'm blanking right now. And so of course you've got Anthony Davis and Jokic as starters, but Sabonis and Fox have put up some great seasons this year, but it's just so tough because there are so many great players in this league.
Yeah, I don't know what you can do about it, but it is hard to say someone and then you ask them who you replace them with, and you're like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
I agree with you on that.
All right, so my last part here is the predictions of the All-Star game. So, who do you think is going to win the All-Star game, and who is your All-Star MVP?
So my prediction is going to be that this is going to be a fun game. I like the rule, where once they get to the fourth quarter, it's you play. I don't know what's the name of it called, where you play to a certain amount.
Elam ending.
Yeah, I love that idea that they did. I think it's brought a lot of competitiveness to the game, so I like that. So I'm going to pick the East to win. They're the underdogs tonight, and with the All-Star game, anything can happen. And then my MVP, I think, is going to be Luka for the West on the losing team. I think he's just going to go off and, do some creative things tonight. And you might be shocked to have the losing team have an MVP. I don't know if it's happened before, but that would be my pick, just in case if the West wins. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, just to make it interesting, I'll go against you with the prediction, just because we normally do that. So I think that the West will win, and one part of it, of course, you've got your All-Stars and stuff like that, but Embiid getting hurt, doesn't help the East, because that's a solid player that will get you some buckets there. But I think that the West is just very deep this year, as they've normally been. My All-Star MVP prediction, I've got one of two happening. I think either Shea or Halliburton. Shea's been going off this year in general, and I could see him just trying to have a perfect year in general, and trying to get every MVP that he can. And I think that of course this is one of them. I think that he could have 30 something and 15, and just like Halliburton. I could predict either one of them to have 30 points and 15 assists just because that's their game. But with Halliburton, of course, what we've talked about before, it's in Indianapolis, and he plays for the Pacers, and he's the best player on the Pacers, and he's having a great year right now. So I could see him trying to please the home crowd and trying to get the All-Star MVP. So.
Yeah, I like that take.
Yeah. Well, all right, that about does it for this episode. Do you have anything else you want to say before we sign off?
I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the game tonight. I think it's going to be fun, like always, and looking forward to second half of the regular season.
Yes, sir. All right, I'll let you go. I appreciate you hopping on once again.
Yes, sir. I'll talk at you later.
All right, sounds good.
All right, see you, bro.
Peace.